13th, 2024. Amanda, may we have a roll call, please?
Madam Chair Rios,
Here.
Vice Chair Guida, Member Aguilar Medrano,
Here.
Member Mather,
Here.
Member Benvenu,
Here.
Member Bescheid.
Used.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Are there any changes to the agenda?
There's no changes for staff.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Guida moves to approve the agenda.
Aguilar Medrano seconds.
Roll call vote, please.
Member Mather,
Yes.
Member Benvenu,
Yes.
Member Guida,
Yes.
Member Aguilar Medrano.
Yes.
Madam Chair has been approved.
Thank you. We have no minutes on this agenda, but we do have 5 findings of fact, 2 from May the 14th. Changes to the May 14th findings and conclusions. Anyone? If not, I'll entertain a motion, please.
Guida moves to approve the findings of facts and conclusions of law from May 14th, 2024.
Aguilar Medrano seconds.
Roll call vote, please.
Vice Chair Guida,
Yes.
Member Benvenu,
Yes.
Member Aguilar Medrano,
Yes.
Member Mather.
Yes.
Madam Chair, your findings have been.
Thank you, Amanda. And we also have 3 from June the 13th, 2024. Changes to any of these? It appears not. A motion, please. June 11th, 2024.
I thought you said that. Thank you. Bienvenu moves to approve as submitted.
Aguilar Medrano seconds.
And roll call, please.
Member Mather,
Yes.
Member Benvenu,
Yes.
Vice Chair Guida,
Abstain.
Member Aguilar Medrano.
Yes.
Madam Chair, your findings have been approved.
Thank you. Matters from the public. Anyone in this room wishing to speak on something that is not related to a particular case that could be related to something referencing H board matters? No one in this room? Is there anyone on Zoom?
Madam Chair, let me just check here. There's one hand raised, just one second. So this, and just to be clear, this is not about any cases that are on the agenda tonight. This is just other matters. So, okay. And the person is Annette Vigil. Please unmute yourself and Ms. Vigil, did you have a matter to address the board on this evening? I see that you're unmuted, but we are not hearing anything in the chambers. Ms. Vigil, can you?
And is she the only one with the raised hand?
She is, yes. And Madam Chair, I understand that she does have a case before the board this evening.
Perhaps.
So perhaps maybe that's why she's raising her hand, yeah. And maybe, Ms. Vigil, if you can hear us, hopefully you can work out your audio before.
Okay. I'm going to move on.
Okay,
to
thank
staff.
you, yeah.
Do any of you have anything under staff communications?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. I just wanted to mention 2 things. At the last hearing, the board discussed appointment of a subcommittee for the St. Francis Cathedral Hotel proposal that presented during the matters from the public. And so I was just hoping that we could address that at this meeting, appoint the members to that committee, and then set, a meeting time to start that process. If that's still the pleasure of the board.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Board members, I'd like to hear some comments in reference to appointing a subcommittee to the Old St. Francis School project. You can chime in if you feel that, yes, that would be beneficial, or perhaps no, and please state why. I'll give you 10 seconds to.
Madam Chair, I would totally like to join that committee, and I think it would be beneficial. It's a big project, and that's a really important piece of property downtown, I think.
Thank you,
So,
Amanda.
yeah.
Anyone else? Member Guido?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll also volunteer for that committee.
And I feel that perhaps 2 members are sufficient. Anyone think we should have another member? No? Okay. I'm sure that staff will be in touch with you in reference to this matter via email, please. Okay. Anything else under staff communications?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The other thing I wanted to note, and Interim Director Heather Lamboy asked that I offer to any board members a city-issued iPad. I know some of you are using your own personal equipment, but for other, land use boards, we can issue you a city iPad if you'd like to use that to, use in the hearing and pull up any documents or to review the documents before the case. So you can, touch base afterwards and let us know if you're interested in something like that. Okay.
Thank you. And nothing else?
That's it.
Thank you, Maggie. We have nothing under old business, and we have quite a number of cases under new business. And if you're going to speak this evening, if you are commenting from the public, I would ask for a 2-minute limit, please, and maybe Amanda can help me on that. And I also have to inform you that if you disagree with the decision that this board renders this evening, you do have the option to appeal. You would be appealing to the city council, and there are time constraints. You have 15 days after the findings and conclusions have been approved and adopted. Okay, with that being said, we'll move to the first case this evening, and that is located at 409 Camino de Montesol. And is that applicant here? The applicant is here. Applicants. So this is Paul's case. Paul, would you give us your report, please?
Chair Rios, members of the board, one moment, please. Good evening, Chair Rios, members of the board. In case number 2024-008706, HDRB 409 Camino del Montesol is a single-family residence listed as contributing to the downtown and Eastside Historic District. The earliest date of construction is prior to 1914, as evidenced by the adobe block and wood of vigas construction material. The architectural design of the structure speaks of a mix of vernacular styles, including Spanish Pueblo Revival and territorial styles, as seen by the flat roof, gabled roof sections of the structure, and a mix of recessed and wood framed doorways and windows. Records indicate that the property was developed and owned by Mr. Jose Quintana and Mr. Severino Vigil prior to the 1914, as identified in the HCPI report by Murphy in 2024. In more recent years, the property was owned by Laura Gilpin, Elizabeth Foster, and Thomas and Jane O'Toole. The current request for case 2024-008706 is for exterior alterations, which include re-roof the flat roof, re-roof the pitched roof with new corrugated galvanized sheet metal, replacing gutters, replacing HVAC units throughout the structure, and refurbishing the windows. Here is a location of the south facade, which is the primary facade of the designated by the board on in a previous case. Here's the north facade showing also contributing beneath the pergola and the north facade on the wall where the divided light window also. Here's a historic photo from 1958 showing the three structures prior to their culmination in the 1980s. Here's an amalgamation of the structure shown in John Murphy's report in 2024, showing the development of the structure throughout time. Here is the site plan, the current site plan, and the proposed and existing site plan. In the existing site plan, the applicant is proposing to install new HVAC units, 1 roof mounted, and 3 ground mounted HVAC units in the structure. Here is the existing and proposed north facade. On this facade, they're just repairing and refurbishing the windows in kind, removing the electrical conduit lines along the structure, and re-roofing the pitched gable roof with a galvanized corrugated steel and replacing the roof, the flat roof with a TPO roofing system. Here's the existing and proposed east facade. On the east facade, there won't be, there'll be restuccoing, window repair. And generally that would be it on the east facade. On the existing and proposed elevation for the south facade being that it's the primary facade, in the previous board hearing, the board designated that the portal was non-historic to the primary facade, and the applicant is proposing to replace the beams, that portal structure, replace it with a new portal structure as identified in this diagram. They're also looking at replacing the galvanized roof as well, and refurbishing the windows, and removing all the electrical conduit lines that currently run along the south facade. Here is the portal on the south facade that is will be replaced, and this is where the exception is required within 10 feet of a primary facade. On the existing and proposed elevation on the west facade, we can see where they're looking to propose the roof-mounted HVAC condensing unit and the 2 ground-mounted condensing units. The 3 units will not be publicly visible. The existing and proposed elevation on the garage elevations and the portal columns, what the applicant is proposing on doing, installing the portal columns, just a revised rendition of the territorial style, and then a ground-mounted HVAC unit on that western facade. Here are the exterior finishes with the galvanized corrugated roofing, the cementitious La Habra stucco, the garage door color in green Willow Grove, and their exterior wood trim in white. Here's the facade diagram showing the primary south facade and the north identified as 3, 13, and 14. Staff recommends approval of the proposed project and finds that the application complies with SFCC section 14-5.2D, general design standards for all historic districts, section 14-5.2E, downtown and east side design standards, and with the approval criteria for an exception to section 14-5.2 D2D addition within 10 feet of a primary facade. Staff stands for questions.
Thank you very much, Paul. Board members, do you have any questions for Paul at this time? I have one quick one. The corrugated roof is being proposed as a light blue.
Chair Rios, members of the board, I believe that it will be a natural stainless steel color.
I can re-clarify with the applicant. Thank you. Member Aguilar Madrano?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question about the corrugated metal, but I will wait until you clarify with the applicant. But Paul, also wondering, is the slope of the roof remaining the same? Just the material is getting replaced?
Chair Rios, member Aguilar Medrano, I believe so. I believe the applicant is looking at repairing the pitch and the overhang, but not changing the pitch of the overhang.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you. Member Guida?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Paul, I'm wondering why this case is coming to the board, and why an exception is required. I mean, this is not really an addition to a primary facade. It's a replacement in kind of an existing feature. Just, again, in the interest of the public's time, and not making more process than is necessary. Is this something that could not have been approved administratively?
Chair Rios, Vice Chair Guida, staff believe that presenting the case, given that the work is on a primary facade, any work that is conducted within 10 feet of a primary facade needs to be approved by the board. And so that's why we brought it to the board today.
Right, but that's additions. And I don't, I mean, it may just be semantics, but it does have an impact on the applicant. It's not addition. The most dramatic visual change in this project is the removal of conduit from the outside of the building. I'm just questioning why it had to come before the board, but we're here. So just wanted to note that.
Thank you, board members. Any other questions or comments? None. Applicant or applicants, please come forward. And you will need to get sworn in. Amanda will do that. Yes, absolutely.
Please raise your right hand. State your name and address for the record.
My name is Jeremiah Collitz at 409 Camino del Monte Sol. And Joseph Carnes, 125 Lincoln, Suite 221.
Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalty of perjury?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Madam
Yes, I
Chair,
do.
They have
Thank
been sworn.
Thank you very much. Yes, what do you have to tell us?
Good evening. Thank you, everybody. As I said, my name is Jeremiah Collitz. I'm both the architect and the homeowner at 409 Camino del Monte Sol. I believe that Paul Duran did a very nice job describing the scope of the project. So maybe just quickly, I'll run through the proposal again, which consists first of all, of maintenance items, replacement of existing stucco, repainting, trim, replacement of the failing roof. It consists of moisture remediation, include modifications to the roof in order to address leaking and also to reduce moisture from portions of the site where the adobe foundations are particularly vulnerable. It consists of HVAC upgrades and also the modifications of non-historical elements, namely the south entry portal, as Paul mentioned, in order to make it more harmonious and consistent with the historical period of the home. As Paul mentioned, the project will not consist of any replacements of windows and doors. So while they may be refurbished and stabilized in order to be operable, all existing historical windows, doors, and their associated architectural trims will remain intact as part of the proposed project. I believe that Joseph Carnes is also available to speak to any questions on the exception.
Thank you very much. And I do want to thank you for refurbishing in kind. Much appreciated. Is Mr. Carnes?
Thank you, Chair Rios, members of the board. Just briefly on the exception requests concerning the replacement of the entry portal on the primary entrance on the non-visible south elevation primary facade. I recall the discussion a couple of month or two ago about the status review, and Member Bienvenue speaking to our request that given that it's non-historic, that the existing entry portal be deleted from the primary facade. We understand the desire to have a review of the particular design of the entry portal replacement. In Mr. Duran's staff report, he stated it has been found that the portal is not historic, though it does to a large extent replicate the historic portal. The applicant is making further refinements to make the portal more consistent with the historic design. We appreciate Mr. Duran's review and hope that you find as well that the request for the exception that was directed by staff for us to apply for complies with the applicable standards. And we ask that you approve the application, and we'll be happy to stand for any questions. Thank you.
Very much. Any questions for Mr. Carnes at this time, board members? None. Anyone from the public, anyone in this room wishing to come and comment? And in the meantime, I was going to ask, the corrugated roof is going to be of a natural silver?
The proposed material is a galvanized sheet metal, so it would be kind of a natural silver metal. It would perhaps dull over time, but that's the proposed material that came out of staff who identified a particular historic style for the home and material that would bear an exception.
Thank you very much. Amanda, would you swear in Mr. Eddy?
Hi, please raise your right hand and state your name and address for the record.
My name is John Eddy. My address is number 14 Avenida Campo Verde, Santa Fe.
Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you. He's been sworn, madam.
Thank you. I find it interesting that this did come to the board, and I'm actually grateful for the opportunity to discuss a little bit about the portal. And the way I see this, it appears to be in the attempt of the architect to bring this, as he said, into a little bit closer conformance with territory style. And this photograph that we're looking at right now is a really good indication how this portal does not really conform too closely to territorial style. And these are only opinions. And that's due to the fact that there is such a accentuated taper of these posts as they come up from the ground. And I don't believe that that is something that we see a lot of in territorial style. I understand, my experience in witnessing territorial style is that they're largely untapered. These posts are reminiscent of what I see in bungalow style, where you see this taper coming up from the ground. I like this aesthetic, but I also appreciate the fact that I believe, and it would be interesting to talk to the applicant, if my take on what they're doing is to try to bring it down. My only feedback on their design is that I would like to see a little bit more of the bottom wrapping of the new portals to come up a little higher off the sidewalk. In this case, this image that we look at, the wrapping of that lower post is very high. So it's interesting to look at splitting the difference there a little bit, because we do wrap posts in territorial style at the bottom to give them a little bit more weight in their design and sense of weight. So I think it is interesting that this came to the board, and I'm glad that staff brought it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Eddy. Anyone else in this audience wishing to comment on this case? No one else? Anyone on Zoom?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. See, we have one person. Ms. Beninato, please unmute yourself and state your name for the record and be sworn in. Thank you.
Stephanie Beninato.
Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalty of perjury?
Yes, I do.
And
Um,
please state your address.
Oh, I'm sorry, P.O. Box 1601, Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Thank you.
I agree with Mr. Eddy's comments about what territorial revival style looks like. And I hope that this new version will be better. And I'm actually happy that the staff brought it because it is still in addition to the facade, to a primary facade. I also applaud the applicant for remediating the windows, repairing them rather than trying to just totally replace them. I do hope that the mini splits or whatever is going to be up there will be fully screened, and I would urge the applicant to do the same on the ground, even if you have to leave a few feet from them for the airflow. I think they really ruin the historic quality or sense, or the sense of the historic quality of the house, by being able to see these very 21st century mechanical units. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Anyone else on Zoom?
No, Madam Chair, I do not see any other hands up.
Thank you very much, Maggie. Board members, did any of you have any comments in reference to this columns, or are you ready to make a motion? Yes, Member Aguilar Madrano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would love to hear from the applicant, who's also the architect of the project, your thoughts about these columns. I do agree with the public comments that are made. I was looking through the photos, and it seems that the existing columns on the house don't have this much of a taper, and the wrap at the base is lower. So, but I'm guessing you may have proposed what you did because it's a primary facade and you were trying to just replace in kind what was there. So I'd love to hear your comments. What is your preference to keep the post as is, or would you actually prefer them to match the ones that are on the other side of the house?
Well, because we can see on the screen now kind of the drawing of the existing and then of the proposed columns. So I guess my attempt at an architectural description of the existing columns would be perhaps a little bit postmodern, which would be consistent with the period in which they were built in the 1990s. So I think that the goal in their replacement, as well as the exposing of the existing beams above them, is to bring them more in line with an historical territorial column. Historical precedents were referenced. I know there's some variability within that style, but again, this was really an attempt to harmonize and to make them less of a departure from the overall historical period of the house.
Thank you. And actually looking at this drawing now, I see that you did lower the wrap quite a bit from the existing. That I guess so the taper still exists, but that wrap is much lower, which I think helps already.
Correct. There is still a taper, but it's much less exaggerated than the existing column. The wrap does still exist, but it has been lowered. A number of historical examples that were referenced tended to find a few datum in order to create some alignments. And so there weren't a lot of places to do that, but there is an existing screen door of some unknown age. So there was an attempt to create some alignments with those existing datum.
Thank you. It sounds like you were thoughtful in your approach and research. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much. If there are no further comments, or are there? I will entertain a motion, and remember to address the exception. Thank you. Yes, Member Ben.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the project proposal. It's very nicely done. I think it's an improvement. Case 2024-008706, HDRB 409 Camino del Monte Sol. I'd move that findings be entered, approving the request for exceptions, finding that all exception criteria have been met for the reasons set forth in the staff report, and approving the project as submitted.
Neither will second.
And is there anything further to add? Nothing further? Roll call vote, please.
Member Aguilar Madrano,
Yes.
Vice Chair Guida,
Yes.
Member Benvenu.
Yes.
Member Mather.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion has been approved.
Thank you very much, and thank you both. Next case is located at 645 Garcia. Is that applicant here? The applicants are here. And this is Paul's case. Paul, may we hear from you?
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Thank you. This is for case number 2024-008759 HDRB, 645 Garcia Street, located in the downtown and east side historic district. 645 Garcia Street is located in a vacant lot within the downtown and east side historic district. The proposed development of Lot 3 in the Windmill Hill subdivision is approximately 3,608 square feet of roofed area on a 0.38 acre lot. Lot 3 is in the Windmill Hill subdivision, where there is one established residence identified as Lot 1, and Lot 2, which is a vacant lot. The subdivision is set back from Garcia Street, and access is via a private drive. The site is concealed by an existing 8-foot-high coyote fence along the subdivision's northeast and south boundaries. Here is the 645 Garcia Street, kind of a hidden subdivision off of Garcia Street to the east. Here is 645 Garcia Street, the subdivision, the Windmill Hill subdivision, Lot 3. This is a general overview looking to the east and to the north. Here is the Lot 3 subdivision looking to the south and to the west. Here you can see the Lot 1 residence there currently. Here is the 645 Garcia Street plat map. Here you can see it varies off by a quarter mile off of Garcia Street to the east, and then you access the property on a private drive. So the public visibility is limited. Here's the site plan of Lot 3. Here's the proposed site plan. The proposed floor plan. The proposed elevation on the north facade. Here on the north facade, they're looking at constructing large bay windows. You can see the attached two-car garage. And to respond to member Bienvenu's question in regards to the publicly visible facade, and this is in 14-5.2 E2 recent Santa Fe style E, the public visible facade of any building and of any adjoining walls shall, except as otherwise provided, be of one color, which color should simulate a light earth or dark earth color, matte or dull finish, and of relatively smooth texture. Facade surfaces under portals may be of contrasting or complementary colors. Windows, doors, and portals on publicly visible portions of the building and walls shall be of one of the old Santa Fe styles, except that buildings with portals may have larger plate glass areas for windows under portals only. Deep window recesses are characteristic. That is the only code citation staff could find for the windows on that north facade. And there's nothing further in detail in the code that states otherwise for the downtown and east side historic district. Here is on the proposed east facade. They're looking at putting a yard wall, open windows, and in the recent Santa Fe style. Here on the south facade, they are they're constructing open bay windows on the south facade with a pergola, and they're also proposing to construct a 15-foot tall cistern in a Santa Fe River Rock cobble. This is the exception criteria staff recommended for 14-5.2E Santa Fe style. Given that these cisterns just don't exist in downtown Santa Fe. Here's the west facade. They have the Santa Fe cobble rock wall extending to the south. The Santa Fe recent Santa Fe style. Here's the project materials. They're looking at stuccoing in Stowe elastomeric, El Rey suede, stucco, building the cistern and yard walls in Santa Fe River Rock cobble and wood frame, natural clear coat finish, natural color. Here's a rendering facing northeast towards Santa Fe Baldy, kind of showing a rendition of what the contextual design will look like. Here you can partially see the cistern, it's kind of blocked by that tree, but you can see the open bay windows, the pergola, and the overhang as you enter into the structure. Here is a rendering from the south, facing south, with the open bay windows, the windmill, and just a general overview. Staff recommends approval of the proposed project and finds that the application complies with section 14-5.2D, general design standards for all historic districts, and 14-5.2E, downtown and east side design standards. Staff finds that all approved criteria have been met regarding the exception to section 14-5.2E, downtown and east side historic district standards to permit the construction of an above ground cistern. Staff stands for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Any questions for Paul, board members? At this time, Member Benvenue.
Chair, and thank you, Paul. So just to set the discussion, just want to get a little bit of clarification still on this issue of public visibility. And maybe the city attorney can weigh in on this as well. To me, this project really hinges on whether or not it's publicly visible. Because if any of the facades are, then some of these windows would not be allowed. And if they're not, they would be. And similarly, I think with some of the Santa Fe style elements and perhaps the cistern as well. So I'm just really trying to get a grip on whether or not there's anything on this property that's publicly visible, which I understand to be defined as visible from a public right of way.
Madam Chair and Member Bienvenue, I looked up the definition of publicly visible because I know that we had a discussion about this during the site visits this afternoon. Santa Fe City Code 14-12.1, publicly visible means the portion of a structure visible from a public street, way, or other area to which the public has legal access. And provided that to be publicly visible, a structure need not be adjacent to a public street or way or area to which the public has legal access. So I know publicly visible seems to be at first when you hear like the part of the definition before the semicolon that it needs to be visible from a public street, way, or other area, but then it goes on to read that a structure need not be adjacent to the public street or way or area. So the fact that something is off a private road doesn't necessarily mean it's not publicly visible.
I think that's right. So I agree with that. It could be on a private road, but if it's on the side of a mountain and you can see it from a distance, then that would still be publicly visible from a public place. But in this case, it's clearly visible from some of the neighboring properties, but it is very set back in a very on a winding road that passes through a number of other properties, and it's in a bit of a depression where the lot is located. It just didn't look to me like any of that could possibly be visible, but I really don't know. And it seems to me that that's something that just has to be determined one way or the other for us to be able to decide this case. So do you feel comfortable saying that there's no public visibility from any angle for this project?
Chair Rios, member Bienvenu. Being at the site visit today, the neighbors to the west can see this property.
Right. They're on private road.
And the neighbor to the north, lot 1, would be able to see this property. And if they're private and they can see it, then it's public visibility. It'd be publicly visible.
I don't think so. I don't think a neighbor on a private road would qualify as standing on a public right of way, which is how it's defined in the code.
Given that, then the neighbors to the west would be able to see it.
Yeah, they can see it, but that's, again, I don't think that would qualify as being publicly visible. That would be visible to a person on a private property that was nearby. Right? Do you see the distinction I'm making? But again, I think this is, I'm not asking you to decide the legal interpretation of that language. I'm more just wondering, is there anywhere this can be seen from not a neighbor on a private property, but from a public way, whether it's Garcia Street or, up above on the other side? I mean, there's roads surrounding this. Is there any road where you would be able to see any part of this structure that you're aware of?
Chair Rios, member Bienvenu, when we drove Camino Ranchitos to see if we had any access to see this property, and there's no visibility.
Okay. I kind of suspect that's the case myself, just from my own site visit, but I didn't do a complete surround visits. I don't know for sure, but I think we can probably comfortably proceed on the assumption, unless perhaps the applicant says otherwise, that there is no public visibility. Okay, that's all I have for now. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Applicant or applicants, please come forward.
Hi, please state your name and address for the record and raise your right hand. In the mic.
Name is Graham Hogan. I live at 1 de Bajo de Ojo in Placitas, New Mexico.
Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth and under the penalty of perjury? And do this under the penalty of perjury.
I do.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Hogan, and thank you for speaking right into that mic. I don't know if that can be raised, but that'll be good.
You bet. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. I appreciate you letting us have the opportunity to share our project with you. As Paul stated, this is we're looking at developing lot 3 of the Windmill Hill subdivision. This is the plot site plan that he showed earlier. So as Paul described, down on the south end of the lot is lot 1. There's an existing house there with an existing windmill at the top of the hill there. And then lot 2 is another undeveloped lot, and we're looking to develop lot 3 on the northeast corner of the subdivision. And as Paul described too, it is a ways off of Garcia Street, and it's kind of a really special hidden, secluded little site in the neighborhood back there. So on the left is the site as it exists. It's a completely undeveloped lot right now. It's a vacant lot with nothing on it. And then we're looking at doing a custom single-family home, which you see in the proposed site plan. And just for future reference, if we get into this, and if it's a value at all, you can see the site plan down to the southwest corner is where the entry into the project. And so right in the middle section of the house, there's a patio off to the south and a terrace off to the north. So those are the areas where we have the big terraced windows. And so in terms of a public visibility, those bay windows are even very sheltered within the structure itself. So, you know, the only way to see those windows would be directly from the south or directly from the north there. So this is a floor plan that gives you a little bit better idea of all that. So the main entry foyer is is in the southwest corner there. And you enter in through that past a rainwater cistern that we're looking to use for collecting rainwater off of the roofs. And that opens into a large great room space, which will be the living room, dining room, and kitchen area. And then those open to a south patio to the south. And then that has the wood trellised pergola that Paul mentioned to the south over that patio on the south end. And then on the north end of that great room space, we have a terraced dining terrace. Off to the northeast corner, we have a master suite that opens to a private courtyard space. And then underneath that is a bedroom space to the southeast corner. And then on the west side, we have the 2-car garage would be accessed shortly after you come through that gate that gets you into the subdivision, and a bedroom over there as well. These are some elevations rendered with color and shadow to give you a little bit better idea of how it'll look when it's finished. But it's basically a stuccoed block house, all designed to the recent Santa Fe style standards. Our highest volume, there's stepped volumes that range from 10 feet tall to 11 feet tall. And then in the center, our great room space there, that's our tallest block, which is at 14'6". And our maximum allowable height there is 15'11". And it is on a gradual sloping site. So the site gradually slopes from the south down to the north, which you could see in that upper west elevation and the lower and the middle east elevation there. But the entire house will be 1 story, all on one level, but it's notched into the ground a little bit to the south. And then as the house goes off to the north there, it actually extends up a little bit. So here are some renderings that give you a better idea of how it will look. The upper photo is the photo that the rendering that Paul showed. To give you reference, you can see Mount Baldy in the background there on top. And then from the south there, on the bottom photo, that's a rendering from the north looking to the south. And to reference that windmill would be up on the hill, up on lot 1. So that windmill you can see from all 3 different lots in the subdivision. And this is an aerial rendering, which gives you a good idea of the overall massing of the project. As I mentioned, it's basically stucco blocks that are all composed together. To the south, we have that open patio area, and you can see the stone cistern off of the patio there. The cistern was really inspired by the windmill that's on site. So it's a sort of nostalgic nod to cisterns that are often associated with windmills throughout the West. We're using it in a little bit different way. It won't be directly connected to the windmill to pump water, but we're looking at using it to harvest rainwater off of the roofs for the house. We think it's a real special feature and an important responsibility to collect water when we can to help preserve our water in our high desert environment here. So we want to take full advantage of that. And then we have a very simple material palette on the exterior. It's basically stuccoed, and it'll be that El Rey suede color, as Paul mentioned. And then that'll have wood accents. So where we have some of our cantilevered roofs over those bay windows, we have wood beams that will extend out to support that cantilevered portion. We've got wood accents, headers over the windows, and our fascia around the trim will also be in wood. And we're looking at keeping that in a natural wood tone with a clear coat finish. And then we have stone site walls and our stone cistern, and that will be built in, in a fashion that's consistent with other stone walls around the area and throughout the historic and east side district. And then our windows are wood-clad windows or aluminum-clad wood windows, and those will have a dark finish on them. So that's basically our presentation. I'll open it up to the board.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hogan. You indicated that this is recent Santa Fe style. Would you also characterize this with a flair of a modernistic flair with sharp edges, big expanses of glazing, and no divided lights?
Yes, I think that's fair to say.
And would you also tell us a little bit more about that cistern? How is that going to be something that is metal, that is a cylinder, that is metal, and then you have the rock put on it?
It is, yeah. So it's a rainwater cistern that will collect the rainwater off of the roof, and that'll be tied to an irrigation system that's used for the landscaping purposes. And the actual construction of it will be a metal cylinder basically that's insulated, and then the stacked stone is cladding the outside of it. So
And
it's
is
a
the
full
stone
in-
actually, you're going to put individual stone on that, or is this going to be sheets of?
No, it will be individual whole stones. So just like all of our site walls and, walls that you see in similarly around there, it'll be full real cobble river stone.
And tell us again the height of that.
That's the tallest piece of the house, and that's 15 feet. Other than the chimney, actually, the chimney in the center gets up to just about that 15 foot 10. So it's close to that 15 foot 11 max.
And because you're using the river rock, you kind of wanted to emphasize this areas where you're using the river rock on the cistern and on the chimney.
Yes, yeah, we went through lots of different designs with the cistern itself and analyzing portion of it, and different finishes and everything with it. And so we wanted to keep that very limited palette to the design. So that's why we picked up on the river rock for the stone walls. And we like that river rock actually has a nice connection to the water in the cistern.
Let's see if other board members have comments or questions. Member Benvenu.
Madam Chair, so thank you for presentation. You answered a few questions. So can you confirm whether or not any of these elevations have any public visibility that you're aware of? If we consider public visibility, I mean, not from a neighboring property on a private lane, but from a public right of way.
You know, I believe that there are no publicly visible sides. I've spent, you know, quite a bit of time out on the site and I've walked all around it. And, you know, as Paul mentioned, I think there are coyote fences that are all the way around it, but technically, you know, the neighbors to the north could see to that site, and probably the most visible view into that site would be the house from the west. And as part of that subdivision, actually, there's or lot 2, there's a section of that site actually that's designated as view corridor. So that house from the west could actually see across that lower portion of lot 2, so that it doesn't hinder any of the views that they currently have to the mountains to the east there.
Okay. Yeah, there's no question but that it has visibility from the neighboring properties. But I'm going to go ahead then and take that as confirmation that there's not public visibility as defined in our code. Because that's, as I mentioned, that's really one of the things this all hinges on, because if there's public visibility, that we have some rather strict, stringent standards, especially about the windows, that would preclude those windows in this particular case. But in this case, it doesn't appear that that would apply. However, what does apply still, even without public visibility and even under recent Santa Fe style, is that the design is supposed to achieve, is required to achieve harmony with traditional styles of architecture through a similarity of materials and so forth. And in particular, that the dominating effect is to be of adobe construction. So in my mind, that's where, if these are sharp corners, are these walls CMU or dimension lumber? Or?
No, it'll be a framed structure. It will be stucco. So,
okay.
You know, they can't be eased corners.
Yeah, and that's, you know, we have just kind of two options. Unfortunately, because our inspectors only look for two things, and that is either square or bull-nosed. And obviously square is inconsistent with dominating effect being of adobe. So we always run into the problem of, well, the renderings can sometimes be difficult to know whether it's just the software that's generating sharp corners or whether that's actually the intent. So can you confirm that these corners would be rounded?
You know, I guess we're open to that. I've kind of assumed actually we were going for a bit of a more modern kind of look to it. So there is a house just down the way that does have fairly sharp edges to it. So we were looking at mimicking that if possible.
Right. There is one down the way that's got, I mean, almost as sharp an edge as you can get. And I can't speak to what the approval process was for that, but in my mind, at least my interpretation of our ordinance is that that does not square with the requirement that it appear to be made of adobe. So I would view this as an approvable project if the corners were rounded, so that we could at least have the appearance that it was made of adobe, even though I understand it will not be, which I think could be a beautiful building. It's a nice design. And as far as the cistern goes, it's coming before us for an exception. I'm not sure if it's necessarily, but I completely accept staff's point of view on that. that it's required in this case, but this is sort of a Torreon, and there are versions of that that are actually made out of river rock. So I think that you also have a nod towards that as well as the Western.
Absolutely. Yeah, that definitely was an influence also.
Yes, and also again, without public visibility, I personally don't have a problem with that. I think it could be stuccoed as well and be perfectly lovely, but the river rock, I think, is also acceptable in this particular case. That's what I have for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Member Benvenue. Other members of this board wishing to comment at this time or ask questions? It appears not. Anyone from the public in this room wishing to comment, please come forward and get sworn in.
Hi, please raise your right hand and state your name and address for the record.
Rogers. I live at Helen Rogers, and I live at 637 Garcia Street.
Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalties of perjury? Thank you.
I have just 3 points that I'd like to make this evening to
You'll
you
speak
all.
right into that mic.
Is this better?
Oh, much better.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to say that we live at 637, which is directly across and west of lot of the new home. And my husband and I are very happy with this new home, with the construction, great relations with the owner, and feel that this will be a tremendously positive addition to our neighborhood. 2, we're the people who filed for the view easement that is between us and this new house. And we're very pleased that that the new construction and the new thoughts for the development of this subdivision are looking at this view easement in the same way that we do, as an absolutely fabulous amenity. 3, we're on this private road, this private drive, as Paul says, and there are 25 lots on this road, including the 3 on Windmill Hill. So all of us are responsible for maintaining this road. We are a community. We have cocktail parties, and we all talk to each other, and we all put money in to maintain the road and our neighborhood. So related to that, a major concern is the construction process for this particular property, and the next one, and any refurbishment of the third. We've had very positive experience with Jay Parks, who's built the latest house in the neighborhood, so we know what a good relationship with a contractor is. And so that's one of the requests that I, as a member of the neighborhood, have, is that as I realize it's not exactly focused on historic, but it's a real key thing of how you go about building a place on a private road. So in sum, we are really supportive and positive about this new home and are pleased that it's happened. We filed the view easement in 2015. This has been a long time coming, and we're very pleased about it.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else in this room wishing to comment, come forward, please. It appears not. Anyone on Zoom?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have Miss Stephanie Beninato. Hold on 1 minute. I will. Miss Beninato, please state your name and address for the record. Be sworn in before you talk. Thank you.
I was already sworn in.
Oh,
So my name is excuse me, Stephanie Beninato. And I don't think this house is going to be publicly visible. I do appreciate that, member Bienvenue is, trying to assure that it does, is harmonious with the new Santa Fe style, which would mean a more rounded look on the corners. There is a lot of glass. I appreciate that it is, passive solar in some way. And I actually really like this water catchment system in the walls, which a Torreon is a watchtower, so it wouldn't be a water containment, wouldn't be a water container, but it evokes that, and I think it's appropriate, an appropriate look, and something that acknowledges the importance of water, especially now. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Anyone else on Zoom?
Madam Chair, I don't see any other hands raised for this
Thank you,
item.
Maggie. Board members, if you have nothing further, yes, Member Guida.
And Madam Chair, I'll make a motion. Case 2024-008-759 HDRB 645 Garcia Street. I move that the board approve the project as submitted. I don't agree that that an exception is required for this project, but if indeed it is, the exception criteria have been met per staff's recommendation. I'll add that the applicant has noted that stucco corners will be eased. That's it.
Is there a second?
Neither seconds.
Is there anything further to add? Member Bienvenue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, so just for clarification, again, because we only have two, we only have two types of corners, as I understand it, that the inspectors look for afterwards, which is bull-nosed or, well, bull-nosed or not, I guess. So are we, when you say this is going to be eased, are we in agreement that that means they're bull-nosed?
That means bull-nosed.
Okay, you said yes?
Yes.
Oh, okay, fine. Then
So the word bullnose can't be used in this motion. May we have a roll call, please?
Member Aguilar Madrano. Member Mather.
Yes.
Member Benvenu.
yes.
Vice Chair Guida.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion has passed.
Okay, thank you all. The next project is also located on Garcia at 636 Garcia. Is that applicant here? 636 Garcia.
She should be on Zoom.
Okay, this is Lanny's case. Lanny?
Give me 1 second.
There she is.
Just technically caught up with you.
So, excuse me, Madam Chair, and Lanny, who should be on Zoom?
Annette Veal.
Annette Vigil. Okay. Hold on a second. I don't see anyone named Annette Vigil, but I do see someone named iPhone, which now they just raised their hand. So
Perhaps that is Annette.
perhaps that is Annette. Okay, let me just double check. I'm gonna allow them to speak and then we can confirm the identity of.
Hello, it is Annette.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, great,
How are you?
Annette. Thank you. I'll mute you and then, ask you to speak later, after, staff's presentation. Thank you.
Yes, Lanny, you have the floor.
Evening, this is case 2024-8704 for 636 Garcia Street, Unit 1 for status review with primary facade designation if applicable. 636 Garcia Street consists of 3 units, which are now condos with separate owners for each unit. The units are located on the west side of the road, south of Camino de los Animas. The multifamily residence is a 3-unit compound with no historic status assigned to Unit 1, while Units 2 and 3 were recently assigned contributing status. The property is located in the downtown and east side historic district. The structure was constructed in the early 1950s by adding 2 dwellings to an existing 1940s garage. Unit 1 is located closest to the street on the east end of the structure. And in the 1950s, the 3 units were associated with the main residence to the south, which was split from the lot in 2021 and addressed as 640 Garcia. Unit 1 is a 794 square foot vernacular style structure, which shares a common west wall with Unit 2. The unit has a flat roof with parapets, a concrete foundation, and stuccoed adobe walls. The south elevation is the front of the structure and looks into a small courtyard and holds a bump out, which consists of one wood casement window. In the center of the elevation is a small portal, giving entry to the dwelling through a plank door. To the east of the door is a modern wood casement window. The windows on the south elevation terminate with flared wood sills. The east elevation has one opening holding a modern double casement window, which looks out onto a courtyard. And there are two awnings and one fixed window on the north elevation. There are no known previous cases for the structure at 636 Garcia Street outside of the recent status review for units 2 and 3. However, the window assessment indicates that the windows and doors are all non-historic with all replacements during 1991 and 1999. The applicant is requesting a historic status designation of the residential structure at Unit 1 and designation of primary facades if applicable. Though the property is no longer associated with the primary structure at 640 Garcia, the unit has historic integrity on its own. It is constructed of adobe and is representative of how historic buildings in the downtown and east side evolved and were expanded over time to meet owners' needs. Staff recommends that based on evidence that the south elevation retains the greatest integrity because of the windows and doors being inset in the old Santa Fe style common with adobe buildings, staff excludes facade 6 as part of the recommendation because it is not visible behind the fencing. Staff also includes facade 7 because it is connected to the primary facade of Unit 2 and the distinction between the two units is not defined on the exterior of the structure. Staff recommends the historic status of Unit 1 be designated as contributing, and the south facades, facades 3, 5, and 7, and east facade at the entry, facade number 4, be designated as the primary facades per section 14-5.2C, designation of significant and contributing structures. And for
Thank you,
questions.
Lanny. Any questions for Lanny? Yes, Member Guida.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Lanny, your recommendation is consistent with John Murphy's report and his recommendations for contributing status?
No, I believe he recommended non-contributing.
I'm looking at that now. It seems like in the evaluation of historic status, he says of the 3 units, this is a report written for all 3 units at 636 Garcia. Says of the 3, only Unit 1 presents a coherent picture of Pueblo revival style. And unlike other condos, it has a distinct cubic form which offsets other devices, giving it interest. The remaining condos have little architectural distinction. So there's a typo in his recommendation, but I believe his recommendation was that 2 and 3 were non-contributing, and that if practical, Unit 1 would be contributing, again, because of its conveyance of the Pueblo revival style and adobe construction. So I would say that would be consistent,
Okay.
which is good.
He
Okay.
did recommend non-contributing for units 2 and 3.
Correct,
And
correct.
we did disagree with that.
Any other questions or comments? There's not. Anyone in this room wanting to speak on this particular project?
It should be the applicant, please.
Okay, sorry, applicant. I'm getting ahead of myself. Applicant, could we please come forward? Is the applicant here?
Hello. On Zoom.
Yes.
I'm on
Oh, on
Zoom.
Zoom.
Hello.
Okay, sorry, Annette.
Annette, yeah, could you please state your name and address and be sworn in?
Annette Vigil, 23 Hakona Road, Santa Fe.
Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalties of perjury?
I do.
Thank you, Madam Chair. She has been sworn.
Thank you. Good evening, Ms. Garcia. Ms. Vigil, excuse me, I just gave you a different last name, Annette Vigil. Do you agree with staff's recommendation?
I do.
Okay, and do you have anything further to add?
I do not.
Okay, thank you. And board members, do you have any questions for Ms. Vihia? It appears that they do not have questions, and I will ask for public comment at this time. No one in this room wants to comment? Anyone on Zoom?
Yes, Madam Chair, Ms. Beninato has her hand raised.
Okay, Stephanie, you have been already
Sworn.
sworn in, so you may speak.
Thank you. Stephanie Beninato, I do hope you'll go with staff's recommendation. I believe that you have given units 2 and 3 contributing status despite Mr. Murphy's recommendation. And I believe your staff has been very consistent in the way the standards were applied and for which facades, and particularly how it contributes to the preservation of a historic pattern on the east side. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to assume no one else is on Zoom.
Yes, Madam Chair, I do not see any other hands raised.
Thank you. Motion, please, board members? Yes, Member Aguilar Madonna.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In case number 2024-008-704 HDRB at 636 Garcia Street, Unit 1, I move to designate the structure as contributing and designate the south facades 3, 5, and 7, and the east facade number 4 as primary, which reflects staff's recommendation.
Guido will second.
Thank you. A roll call vote, please.
Member Mather,
Yes.
Member Benvenu,
Yes.
Member Aguilar Madrano,
Yes.
Vice Chair Guida.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion has approved.
Thank you, Amanda. Next case is located at 711 Don Cubero. Is that applicant here? The applicants are here. And may we hear the case, your case, Paul?
Chair Rios, members of the board, in case number 2024-008761 HDRB 711 Don Cabero Alley, located in the Don Gaspar area historic district, is a single-family residence listed as contributing to the Don Gaspar area historic district, and the north facade is primary. The structure is currently 1,602 square feet, and the original footprint, built in the early 1900s, was approximately 900 square feet. The architectural design of the structure is a modest, quintessential Santa Fe vernacular style, as seen by the original rectangular shape and footprint, adobe block construction material, recessed doors and windows, and a flat roof with rounded parapets. The structure has evolved throughout time, which can be seen from the rooftop and southern facade. General maintenance and repair over the lifetime of the home, have changed the original doors and windows of the structure, and the addition of the sunroom has transformed the southern facade. In April of 2024, 711 Don Cubero Alley had received contributing status with the north facade as primary. Here's currently the north facade and coyote fence on the north elevation photograph, and then the east elevation photograph showing the proposed location of the Kiva fireplace. Here we have the south and west elevation photos. The south elevation photo showing the sunroom that was installed in the 1980s, and the west elevation along Don Cabero Alley Road. Here's a 1978 aerial photograph, courtesy of Murphy's 2024 HCPI report showing the construction of the property, the footprint. Here is 711 Don Cubero Alley's site plan. Here is the proposed and existing site plan. Here they're looking at maintaining the general 225 square feet of the sunroom and establishing a new bedroom. Here we have on the floor plan the existing and proposed elevations where they're proposing to install the coyote fence on the north and eastern boundary lines. In stating this, that the construction of the coyote fence was previously done. So it's retroactive approval of what has been previously established. Here, they're looking on the proposing site plan, the addition of the Kiva fireplace on the eastern facade and the remodel of the sunroom. Here we have the existing and proposed north elevation, and this is my, I apologize for my neglect on this. The proposed north elevation door should be on the existing north elevation facade, but that was just an error. I didn't catch that. But there's no change to that north facade, no change whatsoever. The existing and proposed elevation on the east facade, the applicant is proposing to construct an exterior Kiva fireplace. And you can see the remodel of the sunroom showing that there's 2 canales and divided light windows with an overhang. As well as on the site, on the yard wall will now encompass wrap around over the wooden gate. Here we have the existing and proposed elevations on the south facade, a complete remodel of the sunroom, removing all the open pane windows, closing it off and building it more into a recent Santa Fe Pueblo style design. Divided light windows, a portal with an overhang supported by vigas, something more contributing to what the original contributing structure that we see today. Here on the existing and proposed elevation on the west facade, you can see the change of the entryway from the sunroom, a complete change with the wooden vigas, wooden door, and the rounded parapets and canales. Here's the existing and proposed gate and wall elevations, just showing you the coyote fence, what's established now, and the wall with the stucco wall, CMU wall, covering over the wooden gate. Here's the exterior finishes and fixtures for the addition, for the remodel. They're looking at using cementitious stucco, coloring in I believe it is Sherwin Adobe, and Sherwin-Williams white flower for the wood trim, and then the divided light windows that they're proposing to install. Here's a north elevation rendering. This is the existing, and no changes will take place on that north elevation. Here's the east elevation showing the addition of the Kiva fireplace and the remodel of the sunroom. Here's the south elevation rendering showing the complete remodel of the sunroom and the yard wall. The west elevation rendering showing the entrance into the house, the portal, the wooden vigas, and the rounded parapets and yard wall. Staff recommends approval of the proposed project and finds that the application complies with section 14-5.2D, general design standards for all historic districts, and section 14-5.2H, Don Gaspar area historic district design standards. Staff stands for questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your report, Paul. Any questions for Paul? No questions. Applicant or applicants, please come forward and get sworn in.
Hi, please raise your right hand and state your name and address for the record.
Bridget Stanga, 711 Don Cubero Alley, Santa Fe.
Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth, the whole, nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalty of perjury?
Yes.
Thank you.
Landon Lot, 711 Don Cubero Alley.
And same, do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you.
Good evening, both of you. Who is going to speak and what do you have to say?
Thank you very much for your time. This is the second time we've come to the board for approval process moving forward with the renovation we like to do in the mudroom of our home. We have taken staff's recommendations into account and have tried to rectify all of the different points that they brought up. We've taken our roof from 14 feet down to 12 feet. We've eliminated all exposed vigas on the exterior of all the facades. We've eliminated the two front windows that were currently on the eastern or on the western facade. I think that was Representative Guida's recommendation. And overall, I did a site visit to other properties that were on Don Cubero Alley and just tried to create something that's a little bit closer in line to what's existing on that street and a little bit more representative of the Don Gaspar Historic Region.
Thank you for your efforts and thank you for taking into consideration what was recommended to you. And I think this is a much improved project. Board members, do you have any questions for the applicants? No questions? Anyone in this room?
Madam Chair, just a comment for the applicant. I appreciate the changes. I mean, this is certainly less zooty than before. And I think that, you know, in particular on the the west elevation, I think, you know, you've accomplished, I think, what you're trying to set out to do, which was to kind of create a new entry point for the house. This, you know, this addition seems to be even though it's taller in scale and in proportion with the rest of the existing residents. So I really appreciate the efforts there, and it looks like it created a better floor plan for you all. I think the only question I have is related to the entry portal. The plans and maybe the renderings suggest that there's a column at the corner. But the elevation drawing seems to suggest that there's an engaged column to the left of the door. Is that the case, or do we just get a corbel there?
So one thing that I did note.
I'm looking at the west elevation.
On the proposed W2 elevation, I made a note, it's in red, of I'm taking into account with engineering of whether that column is necessary. I think it blocks kind of the flow entering into the courtyard. However, I just made a note on it right now. Obviously, it needs to be structurally sound and it needs to get approved by an engineer. But if an engineer did sign off on not needing to be weight bearing on that column, I would like to remove that column.
Yeah, I'd guess that it's probably not necessary, but I understand your point. Okay, thanks.
Yes, Member Aguilar-Madonna.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess a follow-up question for staff then, because I had noted a question about this column as well. Since the depth of this is 4 feet, if it weren't to have a column, wouldn't that be considered a cantilever? So I interpret it as we need that column regardless of an engineer's recommendation.
Chair Rios, Member Aguilar-Madrona, that is correct. If it exceeds 30 inches, without 30 inches of overhang, without anything underneath it supporting it or a column holding it, we could not approve it, or we cannot move forward with it.
Keep on.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, that's not the definition of a cantilever. This is a fully supported portal at at its periphery. This would not meet the definition of a cantilever, which is a projecting horizontal plane.
Did you wish to further comment, Paul?
Chair Rios, Vice Chair Guida, I would need to look more into that to see if it would, and I would need to see updated designs from the applicant in order to have a better idea of what they're proposing. But currently, as it stands with vigas, that's acceptable. If they were not to have any vigas there, given the depth of that, I believe it would need one. Thank you.
I'm sorry, just to be clear about this, the corner column is necessary and is required for this not to be a cantilevered thing. The column in question is the engaged column that's to the left of the door on elevation W2. That is neither structurally necessary nor necessary for to define this as not being a cantilever.
Chair Rios, Vice Chair Guida, staff agrees.
Okay, thanks.
So, Anthony, in other words, it could only have one column?
Yes, and this is common.
Okay, if there are no further questions, yes, Member Aguilar-Mazrano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to clarify, the one at the corner is the one I was referring to, not the one to the left of the door in this elevation.
Anyone in this audience wishing to comment? John Eddie's coming down to comment, and he has already been sworn in.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, this is John Eddy again. I'm grateful that this has been clarified over the projection of that portal. And I think you've got it straightened out. So thanks for that. I just wanted to commend the applicants for listening very carefully to the guidance that the board gave them from before. I think they've really reached the goals of improving their project. And I think as a result, actually, they're going to be happier with their house, with the changes that they have made. So I'm very grateful to them.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Reddy. Anyone else in this room wishing to comment on this project? No one else? Anyone on Zoom?
Yes, Chair Rios. We have Stephanie Beninato. Hold on 1 minute. Okay, Ms. Beninato.
Thank you very much, Stephanie Beninato. I too agree that this is a much improved design and that I think the applicants were extremely responsive to the suggestions made. I do think it fits in much better to the alley and what else is there. I'm just sorry still that the coyote fencing is 6 feet high. And I'm just wondering what is the allowable height in that neighborhood. But again, I do commend the applicants and thank you so much for making it a lot better.
Thank you, Steph. Yes, Paul.
Chair Rios, in regards to Mrs. Benanato's question, the max allowable height for that coyote fence is 6 feet for administrative approval.
Is there no further questions or comments? I will entertain a motion, please. Yes, Member Aguilar-Mazrano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Case number 2024-008761 HDRB at 711 Don Cubero Alley. I move to approve the application as submitted with the condition that the portal's column and corbel on the right side of the door will be constructed regardless of the engineer's findings due to the depth being greater than 30 inches.
And is there
Mather seconds.
anything further to add? Nothing further. Roll call vote, please.
Member Benvenu,
Yes.
Vice Chair Guida,
Yes.
Member Aguilar-Mazrano,
Yes.
Member Mather.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion has been approved.
Thank you very much, and thank you both. Next case is located at 918B, Acequia Madre. I see the applicants are here. Paul?
Mr. Rios, members of the board, in case number 2024-008730 HDRB 918B Acequia Madre, located in the downtown and East Side Historic District and is designated as contributing. The structure was built in the 1920s in a mountain vernacular architectural design style per the 1983 New Mexico HBIF form, historic inventory form, as illustrated by the corrugated metal roof, adobe block construction material, and brick chimney, recessed doors and windows. The structure has been maintained, and as you can see today, the owners take very good care of it. In a recent case in 2024-007787 admin, HPD staff administered a administrative approval to the applicant Melanie Spriggs for repair and replace of the middle corrugated roof, the wooden eaves, demolish existing chimney and reconstruct chimney in kind with red brick and replace flashing around the chase as part of the reconstruction. The property owner did not proceed forth with the construction and the above stated work, and the brick chimney fell into such disrepair, it has been completely removed from the structure. So in this case, the proposed construction is to re-roof the structure in kind and remove the existing brick chimney. Here is the north elevation and the west elevation, showing the roof to be replaced in kind and the overall care of the structure. Here we have the south elevation and the north and the east elevation. I apologize, I put the west elevation in twice. The south and the west elevation showing the entryway into the structure, and the north, the publicly visible facades here. Here's the 1980B Acequia Madre 1992 Historic Board Inventory Form report, showing in this top left photograph, you can see on that on the far northeast of the structure, the brick chimney. Out on the site visit today, it's tarped over, and you can see it's no longer in place. Now, the applicant has shared multiple options of restoration, removal, and other options incorporating a middle flue. And I think they do a good job in showing that there are options for this chimney and for this structure. However, I didn't see an option for installing a brick chimney, capping it, and keeping it in place, whether it's functional or not. So I think that's an option that needs to be considered tonight. Here's the existing floor plan showing that the different options. Option one, restoring. Option two, repairing with the middle flue, and then option three, just completely removing. Here's the north. Here are elevations of the north elevation showing the chimney, the location of the chimney. And in order for it to be operable, they need to build it to a certain height. However, if they were to build it in kind, cap it, and leave it in place, they don't need to meet those exceeding heights. Here's on the east elevation showing the chimney's location. Here's the south elevation showing the chimney's location and the different modes of operation or construction that they can do on the structure. And the west elevation. Here's the corrugated middle roofing material in which they look to repair the structure. And here's an overall view of the brick chimney in disrepair and the internal view of it from the adobe block and the impacts of it on the Kiva fireplace. And it is impacting the structure internally. And we saw that today. And so how we can move forward with repairing and replacing this is necessary. So staff does not find that the exception criteria have been met and recommends denial of the exception to section 14-5.2 D1A. Staff recommends approval of the other elements of the application as they comply with section 14-5.2 D, general design standards for all historic districts, and section 14-5.2 E, downtown and east side design standards. Staff stands for questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your report, Paul. Paul, why do you feel that it is essential to rebuild this fireplace, even if though it will not be operable?
Chair Rios, I see two things that have occurred. One is stewardship of the contributing and significant structures in the downtown and east side and all the historic districts. As owner, we're obligated to be stewards of these structures and to let architectural features fall into such disrepair they pose a hazard to you, your neighbor, or to anybody in the public. That doesn't seem right. And two, these architectural features of these brick chimneys are along the entire streetscape. Some of the structures across the street, just north and just south of this property, have 2 to 4 brick chimneys. So it's something that's on the streetscape that's prevalent to this contributing structure. So it should be repaired in kind or reestablished. If it's capped, not operable, that's fine. But that it's reestablished and that demolition by neglect isn't something that we approve.
Thank you, Paul. Any other questions, comments? Member Guida.
Yeah, I'd like to move beyond personal opinion on the requirement of the exception. You know, you're quoting 14.5.2 D1A. The status of a significant contributing or landmark structure shall be retained and preserved. If a proposed alteration will cause the structure to lose its significant contributing or landmark status, the application shall be denied. The removal of historic materials or alteration of architectural features and spaces that embody the status shall be prohibited. I am really struggling with the idea that this little incidental chimney, which has no articulation on the building, certainly in the front facade or on the exterior facades whatsoever, it's just a kind of roof penetration that was added at some point in time, we presume, is embodying the status of the structure. There may be other brick chimneys on the street, but I see nothing in the HDRB, I see nothing in the survey that indicates that this is a character defining feature of a contributing structure. And so I'm genuinely opposed to the idea that a exception is required in this case. And Paul, I understand your points about neglect and stewardship and obligation, but I'm focused here on requirements for applicants. And so that's where I stand on this. I don't support the idea that there's an exception required for removal of this chimney, because it is not a character defining feature. It does not embody the status of this contributing house.
For your comments, anyone else? No one else at this time? Applicants, please come forward and get sworn in, and you can all get sworn in at the same time.
Please state your name and address for the record and raise your right hand. Are you all going to be speaking? Okay, go ahead and if you're all going to speak, go ahead and raise your right hand and I can swear you in all at the same time. Thank you. State your name and addresses for the record. Into the microphone.
Richard Simpson, and I'm at 7 Community McGill in El Prado.
Go ahead.
Edward Caruana, and my address is 3541 East 2nd Street, and that's Long Beach, California, 90803.
Thank you. Ma'am?
Melanie Spriggs, 1901 Cerros Colorados, here in Santa Fe.
Thank you. Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalties of perjury? Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for your time. I'm probably going to bore you with more things that I don't want to proceed with, but to show you that I have examined options on this. I'm a licensed architect, not a structural engineer, but in looking at this, I feel the chimney needs to be removed. I've given options on if we were to reconstruct a chimney, we would saw cut out the corner of the adobe structure. I don't believe that's prudent in this case. I think it's a detriment to the building. So what I've done is looked at, if we can't do that, could we put a flue on it, a metal flue, and try to preserve what's there? In going through this, what I've done is I've given you options, and I would like to propose the option of we just remove the chimney. Back to the fact, it's not contributing in that it's not visible from the roadway. As a matter of fact, I got a good definition tonight of what the public visibility is, and we are not publicly visible. So I'll give you the street views. So going forward with, yeah. So back in December of last year is when this all started, and I came out and took pictures of the existing chimneys that existed. And in the historical code, there's a section that talks about a structure surviving the test of time. This showed that it was not surviving the test of time. It's a brick fireplace that's been mortared together with lime mortar. Lime mortar basically crumbles after a few years. There's no reinforcing in it. The owner pulled out a chimney expert who came out, a repairman, to come out and fix it. That was when it was taken down. There was no intent to take it down originally, but there was no repairing of it. So it was demolished at that time. That's why it no longer. So in that time, what really prompted all this was there was a storm at that time, and a few of the bricks were actually knocked off in the storm, and the roof leaks within the building. So that's when the application was put forth. An application was administratively approved, but when it came time for the building permit said the chimney's way too short. It's 2.5 feet tall. It has to be 2 feet higher than anything 10 feet away, which is the peak of the roof. So when that happened, it basically said that chimney needed to be extended. In my mind, there's no physical way to do that without literally saw cutting out the adobe, putting in a new foundation, and putting in an entire single story chimney. So with that, I explored other options, if you will, that I'm going to show you. And I hate to waste your time with options that we would like to not proceed with, but that's what I'm going to start with. It's the advance. There we go. So why we're here today, we want to request the removal of the existing galvanized corrugated and match that. I'm assuming that would be approvable by you. The thing we're kind of standing out on is to request the removal of the unsafe chimney in its entirety and just roof over it with a new roof. The design options I explored are replacing with a new brick chimney, which I said would remove the existing adobe foundation all the way up. Add a metal fireplace, which would eliminate the Kiva fireplace on the interior. I realize you have jurisdiction over the exterior, and truly the interior is not your purview, if you will, but as an architect, I'll show you a Kiva fireplace that I would like to protect. We talked earlier, you defined, which I thought was great, the public views. So I've given you the public views from the street. And to my knowledge, because we were going into, can you see it from any other street? To my knowledge, there's no other view of this. So from the public views, you will see, you cannot see the chimney. Okay, it's on the very back of the building. So if you go around it, again, it's not visible from the street. So we're removing something that's not visible and in my opinion, does not contribute to the building. It's not part of the vernacular of that style of building. But here are my options that we went into. Replaces the brick chimney. The cons of this are, you know, demolishes the interior kiva, which I would like to preserve. It requires that the removal of the adobe foundation, adobe walls, which I think threatens the integrity of the entire building. So I would rather not do that. It creates a financial hardship, which doesn't come under your purview either. But as an architect, I take that into consideration. So that was one option. The next option I went to, and by the way, these are kind of views of it, but so option 2, just go to my notes, find, was to put in a metal firebox. And the metal firebox would eliminate the kiva fireplace because we'd have to replace it. And I was against that idea. Yes, I could probably mimic the kiva, but it's still a metal firebox. And then that would provide me with a metal flue. And again, a metal flue, what I'd like to point out here is none of that was visible from the front previously. And if you look at these views, I have a stack coming, and I have a stack either coming up out of a metal or out of brick that never existed. So to me, I'm adding something to the historic views of the building that never existed. And I don't think that's the intent of what we're trying to get it to do here. So option 3 is just complete removal of the chimney. And what that does is it maintains the street views, if you will, anything that's visible to the public. And we roof over it with a galvanized roof, which matches the remainder of the building. So I'm sorry I've bored you with all these options, but truly the reason I'm proposing that we just remove it is I don't think it's contributing. It's not visible from any of the city streets. And to me, it's a hazard. And I would like to leave the existing adobe structure alone and not jeopardize the strength of that building. So that's the request, if you will, is to allow us to just remove it. There's the existing facade, which basically has not changed. What I've drawn there is what the photograph showed you earlier. So that would be our request. And I'm assuming replacing the existing galvanized roof with like kind would be acceptable, which is our other request. And with that,
Thank you.
do you have a question?
Let me see if board members have questions or comments. Member Guida.
So thank you for the presentation. Your proposal is option 3 to remove any chimney or flue.
Correct.
Over.
And keep the kiva fireplace on the inside and just make it a decorative part.
Okay.
Member Benvenue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. So, we're talking about asking for removal, but it's really the question of whether we're going to require it to be rebuilt because it's gone, right? There's nothing there at this point in time. So the real question before the board is whether or not something is going to replace that, presumably to mimic the appearance of what was there previously. Correct?
Correct. Can I respond to that? Yeah. I realize I'm going against staff recommendations, which normally I do not like to do.
Sure, and I don't either. And I appreciate the zealousness of staff's attempt to preserve every architectural feature that contributes not just to the specific property, but to our historic districts. And I think that was one of the main things that Paul had in mind, was looking around the neighborhood and thinking of this as a characteristic feature. So I applaud that. But in this case, it seems to me that first, I think it's somewhat questionable whether it was a characteristic feature. It's not mentioned at all in the historic survey. Lots of other details are mentioned, but there's no mention of the chimney. So it didn't strike the person doing the historic survey at the time. As you say, its visibility is minimal at best and maybe no visibility from the street. And I think in an ideal world, because it did have historic meaning, it was historic material. The earlier administrative approval of just repairing it was the right way to go. If that could have been done, but it appears that it was just structurally unsound, and that approach was actually just not feasible. So, and I also am always concerned about demolition by neglect. And that does take place, and we try to guard against that very carefully because, I'm sure you know, our ordinance places an obligation on a property owner to prevent that from happening. But this looks like just a very poorly constructed chimney that it wouldn't really have mattered what you did, what an owner did to try to maintain it. It was structurally unsound and probably should have been removed as just a safety hazard. So then the question becomes whether it should be rebuilt. And I just have a hard time imagining putting a new false chimney on the roof, and nor do I really understand exactly how it would be connected, what it would rest on in the house if it was not a functioning chimney. I think you'd have to build something on the roof to hold it up. So I think we're starting to go down a path where it's not clear to me what really the purpose to be served would be if we went down that. And so I'm inclined to say that removal in this particular case approval of the removal and not requiring rebuilding and just having that hole replaced by a roof and protecting the interior Kiva fireplace in the meantime sounds like the best solution. So
I believe you're quoting Frank Lloyd Wright, which is form follows function, and what we'd be putting up there would be totally non-function.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay, thank
For
you.
your comments. Any other comments, board members? None. Anyone in the public in this room wanting to speak in reference to this project? No one. Anyone on Zoom?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have Miss Stephanie Bernato.
Stephanie, you may speak.
Bernato, yeah, please, if you have public comment for case 2024-008730 918B Sequia Madre.
Can you hear me? Because it doesn't say unmute.
You are unmuted and we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, all right. thank
Okay,
you.
yes.
I think it's really a beautiful house, and I'm happy that somebody's going to do some preservation work on it. I do think it's too bad that the chimney fell down, but I understand it probably wasn't to code anyway. And I think this type of building doesn't necessarily always have chimneys. I do appreciate that they're maybe common in the neighborhood, but I don't think it actually takes away from the historic nature of this particular building just to roof it over. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to guess no one else is on Zoom. So I will
That is correct, Chair. Yes, no one.
entertain a motion, please. Yes, Member Guida.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Case 2024-008730 HDRB 918B Acequia Madre. Move that the board approve replacement of the corrugated metal roof and gutter in kind and removal of the existing brick chimney. But no exception is required because it is not a character defining feature of the contributing structure.
Do I hear a second?
Mather seconds.
Roll call vote, please. Member Benvenu wants to add something.
Well, no, Madam Chair, just a comment or a point of discussion. I think it may possibly be true, as the motion stated, that an exception is not required for the reasons stated. I'm always a little concerned from a legal perspective, though, that I think the ordinance provides that staff is is charged with determining whether exceptions are required or not. And I'm just a little concerned when we override that, whether our findings, conclusions, pass legal muster. And I think I've tried this in the past. My solution would be to say exactly what the motion said, but add that if exceptions are required, that they are met in this case. And I don't know if either the maker of the motion or city attorney would approve of that type of a motion.
Does the maker of the motion approve? Mr. Guido?
John, we've done it before, and I genuinely feel that if the board does not believe that an exception is required and through discussion and review of that, as long as we state that, as we did in the O'Keefe case, it's fine to move forward.
That's true, we did. I just don't know if there's any harm in protecting ourselves and the applicant by just adding that to the extent they may be required, they're met. It's just an alternative finding.
I would like to keep it as is, just in
Okay.
terms of practice moving forward. That's okay.
Do we need a comment? Yes, Paul.
Chair Rios, members of the board, in section 14-5.2 C5 exceptions, it states staff shall determine whether an exception to this section is required. The historic board may grant an exception to the regulations set forth in this section, provided that such exception does not exceed the underlying zoning. So it is staff's purview to recommend an exception. It's the board to either approve or disapprove of the exception. Thank you.
Did you have anything further to add, Attorney Rubali?
Madam Chair and members Bienvenu and Guida, Mr. Duran is correct in reading what he read from 14-5.2 C5, the preface before subsection A. But I know the Historic District Review Board is the final arbiter of the findings of fact. And I know in the past, the Historic District Review Board has made findings that an exception doesn't apply because there are certain categories of protected elements, and your finding has been that this is not one of the categories of protected elements. So I know you've done that before.
So
I really don't know whether that would stand up on appeal or not. I really don't know. Your findings are your findings, and I just, if I thought they were completely illegal, I would tell you so. But under the circumstances, I just write the findings and conclusions according to the record you make.
So, maker of the motion, Member Guida, that stands.
Correct. Motion stands.
So we'll have a roll call vote.
Member Mather,
Yes.
Member Benvenu,
Yes.
Vice Chair Guida,
Yes.
Member Aguilar-Majano.
Vote no, only because of the wording of the exception in the motion.
And Madam Chair, your motion has been approved.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Okay, next case, 807 Gildersleeve. And that is your case, Lanny.
Okay. This is case 2024-8705 for 807 Gildersleeve Street for a status review with primary facade designation if applicable. 807 Gildersleeve is on the east side of the street, just south of the intersection of East Burger and Gildersleeve Streets. It is on the very edge of the historic district. Today's case will be for the accessory structure garage in the rear of the property only. This is not our standard practice, but was the recommendation of the former staff member on the case. And so we are going to go ahead and proceed as the previous staff member recommended to the applicant. The single-family residence and its associated accessory structure at 807 Gildersleeve are currently listed as non-contributing to the Doncaster Area Historic District. There is some confusion with the newer HCPI form, which states that they are contributing structures currently. However, this is an error as there is no proof that the structures have ever had a status review. The 450 square foot accessory structure is a wood frame, one-car garage with a partitioned storage area holding 3 storage rooms. The house and garage were built around 1942. The garage area has a dirt floor while the center storage area has a wood floor and the northern storage areas have concrete flooring. Fenestration is only found on the west and north elevations. On the west elevation, the former garage door opening is filled with boards with a section cut for a pedestrian door. There is no indication when the garage door was altered, though photos from Google Maps show that the door is in the same configuration as early as 2007. The central storage room is entered through a wood panel door on the west elevation, and adjacent is a 6-light non-operable wood sash window. Both the panel door and window appear vintage. The north side holds 2 identical wood doors. A 180 square foot wraparound porch shelters the building on the west and north and was constructed in the 1960s. The porch extends 5 feet from the building face and is supported by wood posts resting on concrete bases. On the top of the posts are decorative corbels made of thin-shaped pieces of wood. Topping the posts is a large wood beam. The porch has a shed roof carried by small diameter wood poles attached to the garage by a thin ledger. Metal fascia runs along its edges with a painted metal gutter strapped below. The building has a traditional stucco application painted mocha brown to match the main residence. The original garage structure is vernacular Pueblo Revival. The 1960s wraparound porch is indicative of the architectural intent of these types of porches from that era, and it now qualifies to be a historic structure due to age. Staff finds that the garage structure reflects the evolution of the property over time and the changing use of the structure. The portal addition is reflective of its time in its design, but stays true to the overall Spanish Pueblo Revival style architecture of the main building. Therefore, the structure holds up to being a contributing structure due to its deep set fenestrations at the doors, wood window, simple design, and wraparound porch. The applicant requests the status review of the accessory structure and designation of primary facades if applicable. Staff recommends the historic status of the accessory structure be upgraded to contributing and that the west facade, facade 4, including all fenestrations and the portal, and excluding the non-historic wood garage door, be designated as the primary facade for section 14-5.2C, designation of significant and contributing structures. Stand for questions.
Thank you, Lanny. In this area, it's common to have garages that are unattached to the house and in the rear of the property. In looking at this today on the field trip, this to me doesn't look like a garage anymore because of the additions, the little portal area, and then it's got a window, and you could clearly see on the bottom that at one time it was that it was used as a garage. I don't know what it's used as now, a storage area maybe. And then it's got the window here on the left-hand side, and then it's got that paneling on the right-hand side. And then on the north elevation, it's got 2 doors that look exactly alike next to one another. I don't know, it didn't look very garagey to me.
It's a garage and storage unit, so it's a combination building.
Anyway, any questions for Lanny? Member Guida.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, and just a note, Lanny, and I know you inherited this from another staff member. You know, in the HDRB, the evaluation of historic status is that while the garage's footprint is at least 50 years old, the 1960s Western style wraparound porch has marred its historic integrity by introducing a design element that detracts from the building's original vernacular Pueblo form. For this reason, the recommendation is to maintain non-contributing status. I agree with that. I also agree with Chair Rios's note that, you know, detached garages were part of the urban fabric in this neighborhood, but I think the loss of historic integrity because of these subsequent additions is the key determining factor here for me, to maintain this as non-contributing.
Any other questions or comments? None. Applicant, Mr. Purvis?
Please state your name and address for the record.
Christopher Purvis, 518 Old Santa Fe Trail.
Do you solemnly declare and affirm the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you.
Hi, Chris. What do you have to tell us? Do you agree with staff's recommendation or not? And why?
Madam Chair, I don't really mind what happens because we're not planning to change that much. I agree that the boards that are infilling the garage door are non-historic. That seems pretty obvious. There are some old elements in the building. It was fixed up in the 60s, so despite what John said about it being no longer historic, it seems like 60s are now historic. So I think staff is correct. But I don't like it, but I think they're correct.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Any questions for the applicant or comments?
Madam Chair, just a comment.
Yes.
Chris, I agree with you, but the 50-year rule is a guide. It's a, you know, it's certainly under the Historic Preservation Act. It's a notation of when something can become eligible for status, historic statusing. And so it's, unfortunately, we too often conflate something that's over 50 years old with meaning that it has to be designated with a historic status. And there's still the question of integrity. And, you know, given that this building's been altered and altered stylistically on top of it with the portal, I think that's the reason to kind of push back on the 50-year rule, and say, yeah, even the alterations are over 50 years old, but does the result of it contribute to the district or not? And does it have an integrity? And in this case, you know, my view is no.
Any other comments? Member Benvenu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I mean, I think that last comment, I think, is the key. I think you know, it could have historic integrity, because all of the alterations are more than 50 years old now, and we commonly recognize evolution of historic properties, and we don't hold it against them automatically that they've been modified if the modifications have become historic or they don't affect the historic integrity. But the real question still remains, in my mind, which is this what came out of those alterations, even if they are 50 years old, are they contributing to the integrity of the character of the district itself? And just as we would ask that about a building that was 100 years old, we would not, it's not automatically contributing just because it's 100 years old. It still needs to contribute to the character of the district it's found in. And that's where I would have a difficult time with this particular case. It's hard for me to see that even though everything may be historic at this point in time, that it's actually adding to the character of this neighborhood or district.
Thank you. I'll open it for public comment. I'm going to guess no one in this room wants to comment or.
Did I just add one thing?
Yes.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say, but once again, I appreciate the zealousness of staff because, as you know, I'm a huge proponent of even extremely modest vernacular buildings being protected, and that would include often an auxiliary structure such as a garage in this case. And so it's not the fact that it's extremely simple, humble vernacular that is the problem for me. It's just that the modifications have become left us with something that I don't think really adds any historic associations or aesthetic considerations relevant to this particular district.
Thank you. So is anyone on Zoom?
Yes, Madam Chair, Ms. Beninato has her hand raised. Would you like to provide comment on case 2024-008-705?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. I I don't know that it should be contributing, but maybe for different reasons. I don't think that the portal has been added over 50 years ago. It is common for people to add portals to their building. There are people coming in all the time asking you to be able to add portals. So I don't think that that should somehow take away from the character of the building. What I find takes away from the character of the building are the openings themselves, especially what were appearing to be door openings. They don't read like a garage, and they really are kind of like a hodgepodge. And so I don't necessarily think that those openings as they exist contribute to the character of the building itself or really to the neighborhood, but it's not because of an addition of a portal in the 1960s. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on Zoom?
Madam Chair, I don't see any other hands raised at
Thank
this
you very
time.
much. Motion, please, board members. Member Benvenue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In case, let's see. Are we? Case 2024-008-705 HDRB 807 Gildersleeve Street. I recommend that the I move, that the historic status of the accessory structure be maintained as non-contributing.
Aguilar Madron, second.
Anything further to add? No. Roll call vote, please.
Member Mather,
Yes.
Member Benvenue,
Yes.
Vice Chair Guida,
Yes.
Member Aguilar Madron.
Yes.
Madam Chair, your motion has been approved.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
And Lanny, I have a question for you. So is the house also non-contributing or is that contributing?
It is currently non-contributing.
Okay, thank you. Alrighty, we move on to the next case, which is located at 1127 East Alameda Street. And is the applicant on Zoom?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I do see the applicant on Zoom. Mr. Romero, we'll first hear from staff and then ask you to comment following their presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair, members of the board. Thank you for your patience and your diligence. Okay, in 2024-008739 HDRB, 1127 East Alameda Street is a single-family residence located as listed as non-contributing to the downtown and East Side Historic District. The structure was built in the mid-1980s with an addition constructed on the north elevation in the mid-2000s. The structure was designed in the recent Santa Fe style as seen by the flat roof, rounded parapets, CMU stuccoed wall, recessed doors and windows. The property currently has a motorized wooden mechanical gate, which was installed without Historic District's Review Board approval or city approval. Here is the site plan and the entrance to 1127 East Alameda Street. Here is the location of there is an existing middle gate, motorized vehicle gate. The width of this entrance is 14 feet, which is approved, is the minimum of approval for fire entry. Here on East Alameda Street, you can see the existing middle gate with wooden slats. This gate has now since been removed and a new gate is being proposed to be installed. The maximum allowable height for a gate is 59 inches. Here's the south elevation showing the entrance for the motorized vehicular gate. Here's the site plan showing the entrance to the property and the location of the motorized vehicular gate. Here's the existing gate and the proposed middle gate. There's photographs of the existing gate, which they took down, and the proposed middle gate. Here are middle gates located in the vicinity of 1127 East Alameda. Now, along this corridor of the roadway, there's multiple middle gates, wooden gates, of all various size, makes, shapes, and models. So in that, staff recommends approval of the proposed project and finds that the application complies with section 14-5.2D, general design standards for all historic districts, and section 14-5.2E, downtown and east side design standards. Additionally, staff finds all exception criteria for the use of middle on the vehicular gate have been met. Staff stands for questions. Thank you.
Paul, this gate, the proposed gate is right at the entrance of the property, correct?
Chair Rios, that's correct.
And also, would you describe this gate as very see-through,
Chair Rios, that is correct.
both the top and the bottom of it? The entire gate. It's got openings on the bottom as well. Little slats.
There are little metal slats. Yes, ma'am. I believe so.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions, observations, comments? None at this time. May we hear from the applicant?
Yes, Madam Chair. Yes, Mr. Romero, if you could unmute
There, I
yourself.
unmuted it.
Thank you. Yes, and please state your name and address for the record and be sworn in before providing your testimony. Thank you.
Okay, Bernie Romero, 11 Caminito Santera, Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalties of perjury?
I do.
Thank you. Madam Chair, he has been sworn.
Thank you. Mr. Romero, you have the floor. Tell us what you want to tell us about this gate.
So the existing gate that was removed was a metal gate with wood slats, and they had a hard time keeping the slats in good shape, and so they'd replace them occasionally. But the new gate, one of the reasons they want to go to the new gate is because they had a really hard time having to go out and check if guests were coming or if someone was at the gate location. So they wanted to be able to see out there and see if, that way they could open the gate. That's the big reason. And they like the design of this gate. They wanted something a little more rustic looking, and it's rustic patina. So this was their decision.
Okay, let's see if board members have comments or questions for you. Member Benvenu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Paul, for your report, and thank you, applicant. So as I'm sure everyone knows, I do object to the use of steel generally in the district. I think that in certain cases, gates are less of a concern, particularly when they're extremely fenestrated, as this one is. But I do think anytime you have sheet steel, even when it's rusted like this, that is very, as on the very bottom portion of this gate, that's very, to me, untraditional and unhistoric. And I know that you can find examples of things similar in the district now that have managed to find their way in. So people can always find a gate or two to, if not 3 or 4, someplace nearby to point to. I think some of those have been done just as this one was without approval, and others may have received approval for reasons I can't speak to. But I do think in general, it's a mistake to make that the norm, that this kind of heavy steel gates in general would be appropriate. We have denied them, particularly when they're very heavy and unfenestrated, and those denials, at least one that I have in my mind on Upper Canyon Road, was appealed, and the governing body agreed with the H board unanimously on that. So there is precedent for not permitting steel in the district, particularly on certain sections of certain more rural roads. Okay, so that's background. So I do agree that generally speaking, this is not, that steel in general is not harmonious. I think this one, if for me, could be salvaged as acceptable because of the, again, the very large amount of fenestration on the rails that make up the majority of the gate. But I would want, in order to be able to approve it without, again, opening the door to more and more of these metal gates with very small openings in them throughout the district, I would like to see the bottom portion have wood elements added to it, which I think would be very simple in this case, because the bottom section pretty much just creates a frame that's several inches deep. So it would be a very simple matter to cover those sheet metal elements with wood. And if that were done, I would be able to approve this gate on that condition. Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board members have further thoughts? Member Aguilar Madrano.
You, Madam Chair. I actually had the exact same thoughts. I do think it's an improvement over the solid gate that was there. Although that one wasn't approved, so I don't know that that much matters. But I do like the top portion of this gate. I also have an issue with the lower portion. I don't know if it's like a laser cut steel plate, but that does read more contemporary. Originally, I was going to propose perhaps that the top design be carried all the way down, or that bottom portion just be solid metal, but I actually really like Member Bienvenue's suggestion that just be covered with wood panels. And the only other question I would have is, I believe staff stated that the max height for a gate is 59 inches, and this one at the highest point is 6 feet tall, which exceeds that. But I'm torn because it sits between two very tall walls. I think even now it looks a little disproportionate. So I don't know that I want to suggest it gets lower. And I need, in an ideal situation, if the wall was being redone, I would recommend lowering those just to improve the proportions. But with that being said, I think the height would be okay if the change to the wood slats on the bottom were made.
Any other comments, board members? I have a question for board members. And when you say a wood element or wood panels, can you be a little bit more exacting?
Well, I can, thank you, Madam Chair. I can speak to what I had in mind. It could be, in my mind, on that bottom portion, the wood panels could be, I would imagine them being vertical, first of all, as the design is, as it exists. They could be, basically the same width as the larger rectangles, and with the spacing maintained on the spaces that cover the entire vertical length of that panel. But they could either cover or retain the two smaller openings in between. Does that make sense? Adequate or
I would-
as a description?
Yes, that made sense, but, and the maker of the motion needs to restate that. Do we have anyone from the public or board members? Did you have anything further? Nothing. Anyone from the public wishing to comment on this?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have a few hands raised. Mr. Romero, did you have anything to add at this point? I wanted to.
Well, I'll wait till the comments are done and then I'll ask a couple of questions regarding the wood verticals in there.
Okay. Miss, thank you. Okay, Miss Benenato.
Thank you. I too am really opposed to the proliferation of metal gates in the east side. It seems from the examples given that there are some very close by. I don't think whether it's proportionate or not, I would suggest taking down the walls to match the proportion of the gate rather than allowing a too tall gate. And I think, yes, it would cost some money to do that, but, they put in gates that were not permitted. And they did the wall with that, I guess, in anticipation rather than getting the necessary permit. I do like the solution offered by member Bienvenu. I might suggest that the wood look something like coyote fencing, which I think would fit in with the district better than what you're saying as wood paneling, which I don't know. I think it could get lost in translation really easily. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Romero, did you have some comments?
Madam Chair, there's actually one more individual, Mr. John Eddy.
Oh,
who
okay.
would like to give comment on case 2024-008-739, 1127 East Alameda Street.
I believe you can hear me.
We can, yes, please state your name and address for the record and be sworn in.
He has already been sworn in.
has
He
he?
was here
I'm
in
sorry.
person.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
I am virtually the same person that you saw earlier tonight at the meeting. I agree entirely with all of the comments that have been made thus far, so I won't repeat any of them. I do want to state, well, I would like to repeat the fact that I think the walls should be brought down in height if they are non-conforming at this point, but that's for you all to decide. I do feel that the strength of this gate as photographed is the fact that there is hand-wrought detail in the ironwork. And this really helps to strengthen our sense of a place in Santa Fe to see this kind of work that is done ostensibly by hand. I could see that wood paneling down below would soften definitely the design of this gate, and that can be achieved actually by using dimensioned weathered wood for one thing. The architect will have his strong ideas on that. And that can be affixed to the back of the gate through a rabbeting mechanism and does not have to be integrated into the ironwork. So it can be replaced as it rots or degrades over time. Anyway, I would support the idea of this gate going in. And again, I very strongly agree with all the comments that have been made so far. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Eddy. And do we have anyone else on Zoom?
No, Madam Chair, we just have Mr. Romero.
Okay, we have a board member that wants to make a comment, and that's Member Aguilar Medrano.
Madam Chair, I have a question for staff. I don't know if you'll know the answer right off the top of your head. But do you know the history of the yard wall? Was it constructed at the same time as this original gate without a permit? And then question number 2 would be, I know we allow walls to tier up at gates. Do you know what that max height is because this looks like, I mean, the wall itself is 6 feet tall. So the top of this where it meets the gate, I mean, is that close to 9 feet tall?
Chair Rios, member Aguilar Medrano, I believe it's 88 inches, the top of that wall.
And do you know do we have a max allowed where the wall meets the gate? Or is it might be phrased that it's like a foot taller than the wall. So like in this case, that'd be 7 feet. But I can't recall offhand. Maybe Frank, you can help out with this too.
Madam Chair and Member Aguilar Medrano, I'm looking at 14-5.2 D9 3. It really gets into the woods here. 3C, little Roman numeral 2, capital C. In exercising its authority under this section, the board shall limit the height of structures as set forth in this section. Height of existing structures shall be as set forth in the official map of building heights in the historic districts. Subsection C, yard walls and fences shall be limited to a height that does not exceed the average of the height of other yard walls and fences in the streetscape. So you have to consider the average height of other yard walls and fences in the streetscape.
And I will just add from 14.8.5, which is where we regulate the height of walls and fences. You are correct that walls and fences may exceed the height limit only over pedestrian and vehicular, entrances. So that may be how this was approved at that height. It doesn't in this section list a maximum height of that, but I'm going to keep looking and see if I
Okay,
can find
great.
something.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the exact part I was thinking of if it gave
Mhm.
any maximums for that.
And I don't have the building permit history on that particularly, but it is generally allowed to exceed the 6-foot maximum over pedestrian and vehicular gates. So that's where you see that step up, for a pedestrian entrance or, in this case, a vehicular entrance.
And Paul, I know you said 8 inches. It's definitely, I mean, at least on these drawings, it's definitely more than that because the wall's 6 feet. On these drawings, it looks like it's like 9 feet tall. 88 inches would be just over 7 feet. Anyway, I'm only asking, I'm just curious if this wall was constructed without permission, like now would be the time to bring it back to lower the gate to be 59 inches or less, and then lower this tiered up portion of the wall to bring it back in compliance. So that's the only reason I'm going into all these details, but I'll give you guys a second to look.
Chair Rios, member Aguilar Medrano, that is correct. And I believe it's 10 feet on here on the drawings, on the design set. So given that this was built without any construction permit, HDRB approval, city approval, it is the board's purview to bring them back into compliance if that is your wish.
Oh, so you do know the wall was also constructed without any permit or approval?
As far as staff understands, and in our background research, we didn't find any approval of the construction of this gate, the yard wall to the height of where it's at. We don't have any of that information. There's not. They built it without any permits.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
The board members have comments in reference to this? Member Benvenu.
Thank you, Madam Chair, because I wasn't paying close attention because I didn't know this was going to be the issue. And now I'm a bit confused. Are we talking about, when you say it was built without permission, when was the wall, when were the walls and gate originally built?
Somewhere in between the time of 2005 and present.
Okay. And how do we know that?
In our records and InterGov and HDRB records and construction permitting records and the property owner, they don't have any information of getting any city permit, construction permits, or any board approvals, or staff doesn't have any approvals or administrative approvals, or documentation of any construction permits going out within the last 20 years to this property or the construction of this middle gate or the yard.
Well, I thought the metal gate was something new.
Yes,
They just, yeah, so.
it's unknown
Well,
on
I
the
get
yard
that we're
walls.
dealing with the metal gate, but now we've switched gears and now we're talking about the walls. And that's what I'm focused on for just a minute. The walls themselves are,
Staff doesn't have any information on the yard walls when they were constructed at this time.
and the wooden gate that was there prior to the replacement with the metal gate was put there when?
Sometime between 2005 and present.
Okay, so that's the 2005. And so what was there before 2005?
It was
Your
just an
knowledge.
open drive.
An open driveway.
Yes, sir.
Hmm. And is are the walls, and again, I apologize that you went through all this when I didn't really understand why we were talking about it, but are the walls non-conforming then? Is that the issue that we're facing with? Are they too tall? Or would they not be approvable if they came before us today because they're too high? Is that why we're talking
Yeah,
about the walls?
Madam Chair, and yeah, that's Madam Chair, and Board Member Bienvenue. It does seem like that is an open question, as far as what the status of those walls are, if they're just illegal and
Okay.
put up without permits and wouldn't be permitted, or if they might be, some kind of, structure that has been there for longer than, but so it seems like we need to do a little bit more research on the status of the walls. I don't believe that the height of the walls would allow for a larger gate necessarily than what is allowed. So
Okay.
you could, you know what I mean? Like there's no proportionality measurement here that would say, well, because we got a higher wall, we should have a higher gate. So I think you can,
Right.
if it's a certain height, and you want to give an exception to that, you can do that, but not necessarily based on the proportion of the walls
Got it.
that may or may not need to be lowered.
Yeah, I understand. So
Yeah.
that's what I was gonna finally
Mhm.
get to was whether or not those walls conform, does that have any relevance to our decision on the height of or the approval of the gate? And it sounds like it really doesn't. The gate height would be the same regardless of what the height of the walls is, right? That's allowed.
Curios member Bienvenue, that is correct.
Okay.
And the
All right.
maximum allowable height is 59 inches. So
Got
it's
it.
right at 5 feet.
We could approve the gate and then staff could still undergo its own investigation on the walls independently.
Yes, yeah, Chair Rios and Board Member Bienvenue, that seems like that might be under a different department of the land use department to investigate those walls and the height.
I think we would just have
Mhm.
to put it in the motion that the gate then does need to be a little bit shorter because the tall point of the gate right now is at 6 feet, not 5 feet.
Well, that's what I thought we were just clarifying, was that it wouldn't impact the height of the gate.
Oh, nothing with the walls, but if the max height of the gate that's allowed is 59 inches, what was submitted today is above that. We're at 6 feet.
Oh, so so are they asking for an exception for height as well? Or did you find that the height of the gate was conformed to the maximum allowable?
We reviewing this application, given that it was just replacing the middle gate in kind, that it was just replacing that wooden one with the new middle gate, staff just moved forward with an exception to the downtown and east side design standards and not for an exception for height.
Since the previous gate wasn't approved, I would still hold it at 59 inches, I think, on the height.
And what's the gate that they're asking for?
That was-
So-
Sorry,
So
72.
it's 13 inches above what is allowed.
Okay, but it is the
Oh.
same height that was what was there previously. Okay. Well, but to not grant that would mean not using this gate, right?
Fortunately, it was built before approval. So I'm just trying to think of it as if this was a new to be constructed gate, what would we approve today?
Okay.
Hey, board members,
Sorry that we had to go through this, but
No,
I
no.
didn't know exactly. I got to where I didn't know exactly what was before us anymore. So
Chair Rios, member
Yes.
Bienvenu, could staff give an option, maybe the removal of the middle base where it has the
yeah,
laser cutting, maybe just remove that and keep the fenestrated part?
maybe we should turn to the applicant and see if that's even because I don't think we've heard from him yet, have we? Or did we? We did. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
we did,
I'm
but
sorry.
Mr. Romero, you've heard all the comments that have been made. And do you have anything further to add or suggestions to make?
Well, of course, we'd like to stay with the height, but if you require, I mean, we can try and cut a foot off the bottom panel. I mean, that's a lot of work, but I mean, I'd have to talk to the owner. I mean, if you can approve it at 5 feet, you know, if we go with the 5-foot tall gate with the high point at the spring point of, I mean, at the apex of the segmented arch, we can cut it down to 5 feet if you would approve that.
Yeah, I guess I think I think it would actually look better if it had wood on the bottom than if that lower section was.
I
cut
agree.
off,
Keep it the
personally.
same height. We'll do wood planks on the bottom to, you know,
So,
lumber.
I think that'll soften the look of the gate. Whereas if we took off the bottom, I think it's just pure rusty metal. I think it'll look a little heavier. The wood on the bottom panel will help it. There are other wooden gates in the very near vicinity, and I think it would help pick up on that. So. Should I just make a motion and see where
Yes,
we're at?
Would you
Okay.
please?
And see if what we need to do next. So case 2024-008739 HDRB, 1127 East Alameda Street. I would move that the findings be entered that the exception criteria for the use of metal on the vehicular gate have been met in this unique circumstance for the reason given in, well, not unique, but particular circumstance for the reasons given in the staff report, on condition that the lower sheet metal panel of the gate be clad on the exterior with wooden lumber consistent with what was earlier described. I don't want to go through it again, if that's all right.
Well, you're in the middle of the motion, so I would suggest that you describe it.
One more time?
Now, yes, I don't know if you want weathered wood or
Yes.
whatever.
All right, so with lumber placed, and it can be rough sawn or something that is harmonious with the rusted metal and the gates in the vicinity. It would be vertical in orientation that would maintain the taller openings and that could either cover or maintain the two smaller openings between the large ones. Best I could do. And submit that for staff approval.
And is there a second to this motion?
Guido will second.
Roll call vote, please.
Member Aguilar Madrano,
Yes.
Vice Chair Guida,
Yes.
Member Benvenu,
Yes.
Member Mather.
Yes.
Madam Chair, it has been approved.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Romero.
Thank you.
Last case this evening is located at 1400 Cerro Gordo, Unit D. Oh, this is Chris's case as well. So, Paul, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Rios. Chair Rios, members of the board, in case number 2024-008740, HDRB, 1400 Cerro Gordo Road, Unit D, located in the downtown and east side historic district, is listed as non-contributing. The structure was built in the early 2000s in the recent Santa Fe Pueblo revival style, as seen by the construction materials, flat roof, rounded parapets, and recessed divided light doors and windows. The structure was remodeled in the mid-2000s with a 700 square foot addition. Here at 1400 D Cerro Gordo Road, the proposed site location to construct a 600 square foot detached garage to a height of 12 feet 6 inches. The new garage will be stuccoed the new structure will be stuccoed with cementitious stucco colored adobe. They will install wooden clad garage doors colored dark brown and aluminum clad windows similar in dark color. Here's the existing driveway from the northwest viewing the location of the new garage. Here's the site plan for 1400 D Cerro Gordo Road. Here is the proposed location located at the southwest section of the property on the site plan. The proposed garage plan. The northeast and northwest elevations. The proposed southeast and southwest elevations. And exterior finishes. Staff recommends approval of the proposed project and finds that the application complies with section 14-5.2D General Design Set Standards for all historic districts and section 14-5.2E Downtown and East Side Design Standards. Staff stands for questions. Thank you.
Questions for Paul? They're nodding their head no. So Chris. Do you have anything to add?
No, I did the house, the addition, now it's a garage because I have a kid.
Any questions for Mr. Purvis? Or any comments? Yes, Member Guida.
You say the kid's gonna sleep in the garage?
Oh, they need to take all the stuff out of
I
that
see.
storage room and put it in the garage. They're not gonna put a car.
It's coming back, I guess.
Thanks.
Okay, no questions for Mr. Purvis? Anyone on Zoom?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Beninato, do you have comments on case 2024-008740 at 1400 Cerro Gordo, Unit D?
I do not have any questions. I mean, of course, I think a 600 square foot garage is quite big, but that's not the point. So thank you for asking.
Okay.
All right. Motion, please. Member Aguilar-Madrona.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In case number 2024-008740 HDRB at 1400 Cerro Gordo Road, I move to approve the application as submitted.
Rita seconds.
Roll call vote, please.
Member Mather,
Yes.
Member Benvenu,
Yes.
Vice Chair Guida,
Yes.
Member Aguilar-Madrona.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion has passed.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you and good evening.
Thank you for your patience. Anything under discussion items, staff?
Madam Chair, I did want to bring something to the board's attention when this discussion that we've had about whether or not the board can make a finding that a particular structural or architectural element of a house or any kind of project before the board does or does not require an exception or is not in the protected category under the design standards. When the staff has said an exception is required for this, one of the things I always have to consider as I listen to these dialogues is, how is this going to look on appeal? And when these matters go up to appeal to the district court, one of the standards the district court looks at is, has the board, whether it's the land use board, this is the land use board, or the governing body, or any other administrative tribunal like the Department of Motor Vehicles, have they abused their discretion? That is something that, that is part of the appellate rules under Rule 1.074. Has there been an abuse of discretion? And as I consider whether or not the board can make a finding that a certain element is not protected and does not require an exception, I have to consider, is the board abusing its discretion? Now, with respect to this chimney on Acequia Madre, I cannot find that you abused your discretion by finding that it is not an architectural feature or space that embodies the status of the building. I think you are exercising your sound discretion, and I always think this board does. And I do agree you can make a finding that a particular element does not fall into the protected categories under these design standards, but I strongly encourage you, please do not abuse your discretion. I think you're very, very, don't just make a finding that these architectural elements don't fall into this category just to make the exception criteria go away or sidestep the need to express exception criteria or to disapprove the project if you find it doesn't. And having said that, I do think that Mr. Duran has the correct approach. He's a code enforcement officer. He is somebody who is assigned to protect historic preservation because there is a public interest in that the city stands up for. And I think when he asks for an exception, he is acting in good faith, even if in the proper exercise of your discretion, you do not find an exception is necessary. If anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to answer them the best I can, but that's something I look at.
Thank you. I think that the board is analyzes things very well, and I think they're very discreet in their resolution of cases. So, yes, Member Van.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to comment again on the staff aspect of that. And, I have incredible respect for the work that the staff does. And I would never want anyone to think that when the board disagrees with what staff's recommendations are, that is in any way anything other than just a good faith disagreement, in the same way that I know staff has internal conversations before they can reach consensus on the right way to go on any particular application. But I guess I would also just add to that in my mind, I like to depersonalize it a little bit, because when I hear Paul, for example, giving a presentation, I don't think of it as just his personal opinion. I think of it as the Preservation Division's recommendation, because I don't think any of these individuals are deciding on their own what to do. They are discussing it, and certainly with their supervisor, and they only make a recommendation that has been approved by everybody. And so when I see that in the staff report, I consider that a recommendation from staff generally and the division specifically, and not the individual that's just tasked with presenting the case.
Anybody else? Any matters from the board? Anybody wishing to comment something? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two announcements. One announcement this week, the next lecture in the HomeWise Livability Series is Chris Wilson, architectural historian, professor emeritus at UNM, author of Myth of Santa Fe, author of Facing Southwest, The Houses of John Galneem. Chris is doing a presentation on housing and housing types in a preservation context. We'll specifically talk about examples and precedents in Santa Fe and opportunities for the future. I'll be moderating a conversation between the audience and Chris at the end of the lecture. I think there are still a few tickets available, so please go to the HomeWise Livability Series website and sign up. That's 6 p.m. this Thursday at Site Santa Fe. Sure. Please come. The other question I have is for staff. and this is just a practical matter because we often have to worry about quorum. What is the status of the seating of an individual for the office seat?
I understand that there is a candidate who is being appointed tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay,
Good.
yeah, so hopefully if that goes well, we will have, a new member joining us at the next hearing.
Thank you, Maggie.
Thank you. Anything else? Our next meeting is Tuesday, August 27th. I will not be able to attend that meeting.
I will not be here either. Traveling for work.
So we better have a quorum.
We better have an office seat.
So,
And maybe a chair?
and so,
Okay,
I will verify quorum before that next hearing, and as of now, we have 2 cases on that agenda. So those potentially can be postponed if we don't make quorum. But I think we'll be okay, but I will let you know.
thank you very much, Amanda. I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
Rita moves to adjourn.
Madrona seconds.
And roll call vote, please.
Member Mather,
Yes.
Member Benvenue,
Yes.
Vice Chair Guida,
Yes.
Member Agla Madrano,
Yes.
Member Rios.
Oh, yes. Thank you all.
Madam Chair, you're adjourned.
Thank you. See you at some point, but for me, not the next meeting.